how about if you owned that business for 20 years and I offered you a check for $300,000?
I'll take
Now,
that too.
that story right there, if there is a business owner that's listening to this today and doesn't understand, I'm not beating up their CPA. However, that CPA should actually be taken out back in the woodshed. And I mean, and I'm pretty bold when I make these statements. That's not their money.
What you don't know is costing you commas and zeros. Welcome to the Owner's Profit Playbook. I'm Pat Mancuso. Most entrepreneurs think their biggest challenge is growing revenue, but the real problem is the profit leaks hiding inside their business. On this show, we break down the strategies, structures, and financial blind spots that separate struggling operators from truly profitable businesses. Because building a business is one thing, but building a business that creates wealth, that's the real playbook.
Every day, business owners are making decisions, working hard and moving fast, but many are doing it without the conversations that matter most. Not because they don't care, but because no one has ever put it all on the table. Pat Mancuso works with business owners every single day, and what he hears in those conversations might surprise you. Blind spots that cost owners time, money, and peace of mind. And advisors who are focused on their piece of the puzzle, but missing the bigger picture. Welcome to the Owner's Profit Playbook with Pat Mancuso, CEO of Mancuso Consulting Group. Before we get started with Pat today, a quick word from our sponsor. If you're a business owner providing health benefits to your team, there's a good chance you're overpaying by 30 to 40% and leaving real money on the table every single month. Pat Mancuso and his team at Mancuso Consulting Group help business owners uncover hidden savings in their health insurance costs without cutting benefits or changing doctors. In less than a minute, you can provide a few simple data points and receive an estimated cost savings in minutes. Find out what you've been overpaying by visiting reduceemployerpremiums.com.
I am excited to introduce Pat Mancuso. He's an entrepreneur, consultant, tax mitigation strategist, and he's really dedicated to helping business owners grow smarter, retain more of their hard-earned profits. And he's founder of Mancuso Consulting Group. He brings over 30 years of real-world experience. He's been in the trenches in leadership, business, tax planning, exit strategy, and actually for a few decades, he facilitated and delivered sales and leadership training across North America for Keller Williams. If you don't know Keller Williams Realty is the second largest real estate company in North America, almost 80,000 associates. So he's kind of cut his teeth on a lot of different things there, but ultimately helps owners increase both cash flow and company value. Also, check out his podcast. He's the host of the Owner's Profit Playbook podcast, where he shares conversations focusing on many things, but profit leaks inside businesses. So, Pat, thanks for joining me.
Oh my gosh, Jeremy, thank you so much. I'm just excited to be here, and I do need to do something because I do have a big following at Keller Williams. They're like 170,000 agents now, so that 80,000.
Okay, we need to update your LinkedIn because that's where I got it.
They just went from 80 to 170.
Oh, seriously? Wow.
No, I'm kidding. No, but
it's all because of your training.
Oh, I wish. But no, I am super excited about being here, and I just want to obviously acknowledge you and John and the team at Rise 25, and you talked about the gifting process. I am a recipient of that, and you also do and produce our podcast. So we're just excited about the opportunity to be here today.
I love it. Let's start off with, I know at the beginning we were talking about, before we hit record, blind spots of business owners. You are talking a lot on a daily and weekly basis. What are some of the blind spots you're seeing?
Well, I think first Jeremy, it's important to define what a blind spot is, so a business owner understands it. We all have blind spots, right? And sometimes those blind spots can be, we're not getting the right information. Sometimes we're getting information from the wrong people. Sometimes we're not even looking at information, and because a lot of business owners are very busy. They're running, morning, noon, night, weekends, and they're just not slowing down enough. So, a blind spot is something you can't see. You might not understand it. you maybe got the wrong information. And, business owners have blind spots many times in many parts of their business. And, we're talking with, 2 to 3 business owners a day in various parts of their business, whether it's, tax mitigation, healthcare, cost savings, whether it's organizational development, whether it's profitability, whether it's sales. We're having conversations every day, and every one of those conversations is a story for me that I get to share with people about those blind spots that people have. It's not bad. It's just a blind spot, and we all have them. Unfortunately, though, sometimes blind spots cost us a lot of money, and money that we worked really hard to earn.
What are some specifics that you've seen when you're on the phone with people?
Oh, I was sharing one with you recently that was incredibly painful, but is very common. And so think if you're a business owner who has employees, which would be a lot of business owners. Now, think if you're a business owner who has employees who those employees maybe use company vehicles or use their own vehicles to do company business. There is a liability there that many business owners either are not aware of, or maybe they're aware of it, but they're not aware of the extent. So I recently had a conversation with a past client of ours who we did some work for previously in the tax credit world. And they shared a story with me that it's probably about 3 or 4 years ago, that one of their employees, great employee, never had any issues with this employee, was driving one of their company vehicles, got distracted, not intentionally. We get distracted all the time. It wasn't even a cell phone issue. It was just they got distracted. They looked down, and by the time they looked back up, they were in the process of rear-ending a vehicle with 2 participants, 2 people in the car. Unfortunately, one of the participants perished, and one of the other people in the car, I know your eyes lit up. Isn't that crazy? And one of the other participants is disabled for the rest of their life. Now, this particular business owner had an umbrella policy, which if you do not have an umbrella policy in your business, make a note. You have to have an umbrella policy, because absent an umbrella policy, you have no protection. This individual had an umbrella policy. The level of the umbrella policy I'm just going to disguise numbers so people could never connect it, but let's say it's 5 million. Okay. How much is a life worth? How much is being disabled for the rest of your life worth? Well, that umbrella policy only covered so much. And the challenge for this particular business owner is they didn't have their businesses in a trust, which meant their businesses were vulnerable to additional mitigation. And that additional mitigation is now being paid out based upon a settlement over 5 years. They had no idea they should have their business in a trust. Now, I'm guessing 70 to 80% of the business owners listening to this conversation right now are going, why do I need to have my business in a trust? What is a trust? And I don't have my business in a trust. And the reality of that is one of the things that we talk about with business owners is asset protection. Now, in full transparency, Jeremy, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a licensed CPA. I'm not a licensed financial planner. However, I have enough education and enough smarts to build relationships and partnerships with some of the smartest people, the most recognized people, and some people who have actually built some of these industries. So I don't need to know. I don't need to be the expert. I just need to be the quarterback and have the conversations with business owners. And that's what we do every day. And so that conversation that I was just sharing with you, that particular client is now a client with going through a process with us where we've put them in touch with the attorney who's going to build out the trust. This individual also is looking for tax mitigation. So in my world, there many times is a conversation with the business owner may lead to 2 or 3 blind spots that we help them fix.
Well, I know, Pat, you have this 360 Mancuso method, right?
Yeah.
Which is prepare, protect, prosper. And that kind of falls under the protect piece.
Correct.
Is there anything else in the protect that we should talk about?
Tax mitigation. So a lot of business owners have not even thought about what exit looks like. So just by coincidence, I had a conversation earlier today. I was interviewing somebody on our podcast, and John, the conversation was such, let me just stop, since we're not live, right?
No, we are. I mean, keep going. That's fine. I'm
Okay.
actually going to
So,
pull up
yeah,
the podcast here just so people can check it out. But
yeah. So I was having a conversation today with a business owner, and we were talking about he asked me and name again. I've been on a few podcasts today, but Rich Monroe, who did a great job today talking about
out of the
what
thousands I've done, Pat, I can't keep track of all of them either.
I know, but like I have this, brain freeze. But anyways, Rich was talking to me about a potential associate of his who's selling a business, and one of the things that a lot of business owners don't understand is that first, business owners get frustrated, and that's when they sell. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Or they get a tap on the shoulder and somebody is going to offer them more money than they ever thought they could get. But many times, no matter what the circumstances are, business owners not prepared for exit in terms of maximizing their value, mitigating their taxes, and planning enough in advance. I work with Ed Lyon, who's one of the most recognized tax attorneys in the country. He's been on our podcast before, and he's our tax mitigation and tax planning attorney. And Ed's been recognized as well as one of the most funniest tax attorneys by CNN in the country. But in these conversations with Ed, the fact of the matter is most businesses should start 3 to 5 years before they think about selling to maximize their minimization of tax. In other words, I can do certain things 3 years out, 4 years out, 5 years out, even 2 years out, 1 year out, and I can even do some tax mitigation after I sell. But if you go backwards to forwards from when I sell to 5 years out, I get less tax mitigation if I'm not planning proactively. The second thing with exits is that many times business owners don't understand the metrics that a buyer is going to look at when they want to purchase the property or purchase the business. So, just as an example, simple example, if you have two clients who make up 60% of your revenue, that's pretty good. A lot of business owners go, yay, that's awesome. I'm dealing with less clients. The problem is if one or two of them close, sell, go, you're like, there's no value there. So we were looking at buying an accounting firm about a year ago, and great business, established relationships. And they hadn't raised their prices in like 5 years, but they raised them right before they put the business on the market. Well, as a prospective buyer of that business, I looked at that and I went, okay, well, there's not enough maturity. There's not enough curing of that. How many of those clients are now going to be client in the future? So there's a lot of things around exit that people are not preparing for. And you always use this analogy. Like if I'm going to get in the car and go drive someplace I haven't been to, I put the address in the GPS. Every business owner needs to have the address of what their exit is. They can always change the address. They can always go in a different direction. But without that, every decision they make every day, they have no idea if that's moving closer to that exit or farther away.
I want to keep going into the 360 method, and we'll go into prosper and prepare. But before we go into that, I'm curious, you were looking at buying this company.
Yes.
What are the factors that you look at? And you mentioned one of them, is there like a risk of like client concentration? What are the other things you look at to see this is a business we want to buy or don't want to buy?
So one of the first things we did, and this would be always what you'd want to do, is you want to look at the numbers and understand the numbers. In this case, one of the first things that I did after I acquired their financials is I went to a CPA who I have a great relationship with, and they buy businesses. And I said, okay, tell me about this business. Tell me about the numbers. Tell me about the economics. They were able to share with me what the average value of a client is in the terms of the tax client that these folks had. And so we looked at their numbers and they were under the market in pricing. Now, on one hand, that's an opportunity. But on the other hand, that could be a potential risk because if we raise their fees to the market, now we may lose the potential revenue base that we had there. So that was the first thing. The second thing was in terms of their client base, what were they doing for marketing? And the fact of the matter is they were doing nothing, respectfully, very little. In terms of, were they offering additional services? Were they creating referrals? Were they sharing value adds to their clients along the way? Were they bringing them different, additional tax strategies? Like we were talking about some of the things we do for companies, and this individual who owned the firm, I mean, amazing CPA, however, said, well, I'd never heard of that before. Well, if they've never heard of it before, that means their clients aren't taking advantage of it if they could. So that was one of the things. We looked at the employees. Some of the employees were at a point where they may not stay with the firm. And so we were buying, when you really look at that type of business, there's not a lot of asset value in terms of, there's not a software value. There's not equipment value, desks, maybe computers, maybe some software, but in terms of proprietary things, the value is in their client base and in the people and their reputation, great reputation. The challenge for the people was some of those people would probably leave because they've been with the owner for so long. The owner was willing to stay on, but those were some things that we looked at. We looked at receivables. What did they have out there in terms of outstanding receivables? So we actually were pretty far along the way. And then another offer came in and we're like, hey, no, we're not going to compete on a business. I mean, respectfully, there's accounting firms all over the place. And then we got a call about 2 months after, and that offer fell apart. So we didn't end up buying it, but it was a good process to go through, because mostly I've done startups. I haven't bought into business. I've looked at a lot of businesses, but when we looked at what we were doing in that realm, we felt like, we could go buy an accounting firm versus we could actually make a great relationship with firms who do this tax mitigation, tax planning. That's how we got in relationship with that line with Excel Empire.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, because it sounds like it's a tough decision, and you may have made an offer at that point, but you weren't going to compete, because I could see, like you said, average value of the client is low. That's an opportunity and a risk. The marketing, not great. Well, a lot about marketing, so there's an opportunity, but then employees are leaving. That's a risk. So it's like, what are the advantages and disadvantages here? And it sounded like the disadvantages kind of outweighed it.
Well, and I've been very fortunate to, I got into Roland Fraser's world and Ryan Dice's world about 3 years ago. And the whole model that they have is acquiring businesses to build growth in businesses versus starting new businesses. So, roll-ups are a part of that. Platform companies are a part of that. So I've learned a lot in the mastermind and those relationships. And, there's just a lot to know there. So if on the buyer side, I need to know. And if I'm on the seller side, I need to know. And so there's just a lot of resources as part of that group as well.
So
Ryan, by the way, both Ryan and Roland have been on our podcast previously.
They'll have to check that out. So I was looking at, Pat, the protect, and you mentioned some of these things, piece, which is annual tax planning, long-term tax planning. You mentioned some of the insurance stuff. And then what about on the prepare side?
So the prepare side ties into the exit side. So one of the first things that buyers look at of a company is, what is their operations? What are their systems? What are their processes? And so many businesses, if you think about how a lot of businesses start, I always have this kind of conversation because I've heard this so many times. We started the business based upon the bonfire in the backyard, and we had a couple of cocktails when we were doing it. And we're entrepreneurs. We didn't know what we didn't know. And so, which is awesome. That's the American way. It's the American dream. Oh my gosh. However, what happens is they build it entrepreneurially. So there's no focus, there's no awareness on exit, nor does it need to be when they start the company. But along the way, so Jeremy, let's just hypothetically say you got a tap on the shoulder. I know this would never happen, but somebody came up and said, Jeremy, I want to buy your company for $5 million today. Now, you probably wouldn't sell. Maybe you would. I don't know. You don't need to disclose.
Or $5 billion? Come on.
Yep, exactly. Now, Jeremy, I offer you $5 million. You get super excited, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, but you're not going to net $5 million, number one, because if you sold tomorrow, there's very little tax planning, tax mitigation. Okay. Two, when I give you $5 million, I'm going to probably have some hooks that you're going to stay on for a while because the value is used. So now that's a whole different deal. But the last thing that happens is in due diligence. So now I'm going to go, Jeremy, I'm going to give you 5 million, but I need to do due diligence on the company. I need to go in and look under the hood and see what's really there. Well, if your prepare piece is not solid, like let's say that there's an employee issue that's not been resolved. Well, now that just dropped your value. Let's say that you don't have a buy-sell agreement in place and we discover through your due diligence that your relationship is not great and we're going to be in business with your ex-partner. There's just so many things. So the prepare part is you can't prepare everything when you start. It's a systematic process, but you got to focus on the big things first that put your business at risk. Partners. Okay, you've got a partner, right, John? Right? I don't know if you do or you don't. You don't have to admit, but buy-sell agreements, I went through that. I exited from a group of 7 people. We had a buy-sell agreement. It cost us a lot of money, and even with that, it was an absolute nightmare. Nightmare. Now, I don't know if my NDA is expired on that, but we would never go there. So the thing is, there's a lot of stories there. We could share some, but the point is, human beings are.
I don't want to get you in trouble, but yeah. The bottom line is, some people may not have that agreement in place, is what you're saying.
They need to have that agreement in place because, by the way, okay, so let's just not be morbid, but you wake up in the morning and people die. Well, what if the owner, the founder dies, and now through that process, the wife is now the owner of the stock? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It might be a great thing. But now, because we didn't have a buy-sell agreement in place, I don't get to choose my partner. It's automatically done for me as part of the process. Or, Jeremy, that individual is the Wicked Witch of the West, and the value of the company is $100,000, and it's going to cost us $1 million to get him out. There's we talked about when we jumped on here. I had a conversation about 2 months ago with a business owner and a past client of ours. We were talking to them about some other services, and they shared with me that they had an employee embezzle over 6 figures. Okay, now people would go, well, how does that happen? Because they don't have systems and processes in place to understand what they should be looking at. Embezzlement happens all the time. It's crazy. So, one of the things that we talk to business owners about is the financial piece, is understanding their profit and loss statement. But that's not going to help them with embezzlement, I can assure you. Because most P&Ls are one lines, and here's what we spent on marketing. And there's stories after stories after stories how people get creative with embezzling. Like, we had a local title company. They lost $1.8 million, one of the largest title companies in the country in terms of, and I'm not going to mention the name because it's not worth it, multiple title offices. They had $1.8 million embezzled because the closer had created a company that they were issuing checks to, and it wasn't caught until later on. It's so that's the prepare part. There's so many things as part of that. Hiring, so you don't get sued on litigation. We started a business about a year and a half ago, and we terminated the manager we hired almost right away because there was some things we discovered that were not disclosed. And then they tried to collect unemployment from us. And the only reason that they were unsuccessful doing that, and according to our attorney, that never happens in the state of Minnesota, is that we had the proper documentation that we could support their termination. Because I live, unfortunately, in a state that's very pro-employee and so anti-employer, and usually they find on the case of the employee and not the employer. So I could go on and on and on with those examples, like, even on the customer side, what is our process for documenting the customer service experience? Do we have, tracking? So that's the prepare side. There's a lot of pieces to that.
Yeah, so from a prepare side, it sounds like you mentioned there's strategy, there's systems, there's financial models, goals. Then the protect side, kind of the risk management. And then what about on the prosper side? That sounds like the fun one out of the 3 to me.
Yeah, so the prosper side is really about Understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing versus being a W-2 employee making 250 grand a year in a company, building up a 401k in retirement. It's really about understanding what that exit looks like and preparing for it well in advance. So we have a tool that we offer to clients, and it's you need to understand what your value is today. So in less than 5 minutes, you could plug in some data points. And this is Biz Equity. Scott's been on our show. Scott's a part of Biz Equity, one of the creators, if you may, Scott Gephardt. And we can create a value point for you. Now, is it exactly to the penny value? No, because my real estate experience says value is when somebody gives you what they think your company is worth. That's value. But understanding what the value of your company is today and understanding where you want to maybe get to, we can help with that process, because every decision you're going to make along the way, invest in an employee, invest in new equipment, invest in new product sales, all those things will either compound value or reduce value. And we have tools to help business owners with that. So it's just under the prosper part is understanding where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? When do you want to get there? And then monitoring it along the way. Understanding, I use this example. There was a time where there was a conversation with an accountant, with a client. So we had CPA on the call with a business owner, and the attorney, this was Ed Lyon, had a conversation with this particular business owner and CPA and said, I'm looking at your tax information, and it doesn't appear that you're taking advantage of the Augusta rule. Now, the Augusta rule, for people who don't know, it's a tax credit in the code. It's been there forever. And basically, as a business owner, if you're hosting meetings at, let's say, hotels or venues that you pay money for, you actually can utilize your house on an annual basis a little bit over $15,000. Certain restrictions, again, not tax advice. However, the process to do it is laid out right in the code. And so the conversation with the business owner and the CPA was, this is potentially something you take advantage of. And the CPA said, well, that's pretty small, relatively speaking, in the big picture. Hey, Jeremy, if I offered you a check for $15,000 today, would you think that's pretty small?
I'll take it.
How about if you owned that business for 20 years and I offered you a check for $300,000? Now,
that too.
That story right there, if there is a business owner that's listening to this today and doesn't understand, I'm not beating up their CPA. However, that CPA should actually be taken out back in the woodshed. And I'm pretty bold when I make these statements. That's not their money. It's not their money. It's too small for us to focus on. I'll tell you what, Jeremy, you be that CPA, write me a check for 300 grand for 20 years because it was too small. You think you see that? It just blows my mind. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, by the way, if that 300,000 was in the bank and I was going to sell my company, do you think that increased my multiple of my company? Hello. That's the prosper part.
Are there other missed opportunities that you see? Obviously, you have to consult your professional with these things, but you mentioned the Augusta rule, other kind of missed opportunities, obviously, if it applies, right?
Yeah. So there's so many of them. And what Ed would say if he was having a conversation is there's so many strategies that somebody could take advantage of. Now, it's not one size fits all. People are in different circumstances, but even 401ks and Roths, there's a way that people can maximize a Roth to get a higher return on investment without the risk that people think they might have. Life insurance. I have a partnership with Garrett Gunderson, and we've licensed all of Garrett's materials. What would the Rockefellers do? And Garrett has taught me so much about building wealth through ownership of business, both in high W. We're not just talking about business owners, Jeremy. High W2 wealth, high W2 net worth. Those folks, those actually are some of the people that get the least amount of tax planning, because people think there's nothing I can do as a high W2 net worth, and there's a whole bunch of things you can do. And so, but what Garrett talks about is using your life insurance to be a bank. that conversation that I was talking to you about, the business owner who had that tragic thing happen in their company, one of the questions he asked me, we talked about before we got off the call, was, I'm sick of being personally guaranteeing my loans at the bank. And I said, well, what if you didn't have to do that anymore? And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, universal life is a way, and this is a strategy of Garrett's that he talks about a lot. I'm not saying universal life is what you should do, and I'm not not licensed in life insurance yet. However, I have a partnership with some of the most amazing people in that field right now. But universal life could be a vehicle to become your own bank. And most people don't understand that.
There's two things, Pat, that I hear a lot about that I'd love for you to talk about, which is one, R&D incentives out there, and then healthcare savings. Before we talk about that, I just pulled up, I actually, funny enough, did listen to this episode in preparation for our call. This is the one, if you're listening and you're not watching the video, there's a video portion. Scott, right here from Biz Equity. It was a really good episode, pretty informative, so people can check that out. But one thing I noticed is, and I've heard this, like certain people qualify for R&D incentives, certain people don't. Well, at this point in time, what should people be thinking about from an R&D incentive perspective?
So Jeremy, I got into the R&D space back in 2020, and this was before COVID. And R&D was historically 100% basically impact in the year that you expended the R&D related activities. So one of my first clients was a very, very large real estate brokerage, and we fought their CPA respectfully for about 6 months on it. And finally, I looked at the client and, I said, who's been a friend of mine forever, I said, not my money, it's your money. But there's nothing else we can tell this individual that's going to convince them that you're eligible for R&D. And so you're going to have to make a decision. That particular client is back with us. Again, they made the decision to move forward with it. And we had, I've seen you pulled up there. We did a podcast interview with Brian Pearson from AIA, which is one of the larger companies. Basically, we push all of our business to Brian, and I've had a relationship with Brian since 2020. And so when COVID hit and the employee retention tax credit came around, you couldn't take both. And the way that R&D was structured at that time, it was really not beneficial for companies to do R&D in 22, 23, and 24 after ERC had expired. So the new administration came in, and in the big, beautiful bill, they created a look back period, which expires on July 5th. There is still time, depending upon when people are listening to this, but you would have to get on the bucket right now. But basically, R&D is related to not just lab coats, not just test tubes in a laboratory. The intention of R&D has always been having U.S.-based companies do expand products, services, offerings, whether it's internal, external, creating products to keep jobs here in the U.S. and keep people employed. So there's many companies that are qualified for R&D, and the company isn't qualified. Let's be really clear. Again, full disclosure, Jeremy, I'm not giving tax advice. I'm not giving legal advice. It's not the company that's qualified for R&D. It's what they do. It's the activities that they do. And so many companies do activities that are R&D eligible. And the great part about this is I don't need to be the R&D expert. I have a high level of R&D experience, but the teams we work with, the CPAs, the firms, they have attorneys, they have CPAs, they have audit protection, and they're the ones who are reviewing, keeping up on the code, and making sure that our clients that are taking advantage of R&D are protected in terms of that process. So R&D is now, there's a look back period that expires July 5th through 22, 23, 24. However, R&D is now moving forward 25 and moving forward. It's always been in the law. It started in the Reagan administration. It was codified a number of years ago. But for companies, if you're listening to this now and you are beyond the July 5th date, if you have filed an extension for 2025 and you've not looked at R&D, you actually could still do R&D before you file your returns for 25 and immediately potentially mitigate tax liability based upon whatever R&D eligibility you might have.
I want to get into the healthcare savings because, I do want to just touch on what you just said, which is if this stuff sounds interesting to people, I know how does it work? Do you do like a call with people, or do they go on your site and do an assessment? Like where do people start with your process typically?
Yeah, we actually have a website where they can do an R&D. We call it R&D quick check. It's I'm pretty sure it's rdquickcheck.com. R&D. I'd have to pull it up. We've got so many domains and stuff. But basically, there's a place that they can go, give us a couple of data point or answer a few questions. Actually, a few. It's a little bit more than a few, but it's going to give us a pretty good idea that based upon their activities, does it make sense for us to jump on a call? So then we jump on a call. We start. If they want to take the next step. Basically, Jeremy, we get to the point where we actually take them through the entire process, and we haven't collected a penny from them. Once we do their entire process and then we turn it over, we basically create this case file for the team that we work with at AIA. Then the CPAs, the folks, the attorneys, the experts, all the folks that are involved in that process in Austin, they will then come back with an estimate for the client range of recovery. And then at that point, the client signs a letter of engagement if they want to move forward and have the team put together all the pieces of the puzzle they need to take advantage of that tax credit. So there's no charge up front, no charge for us to create that estimate. And at the time that we create the estimate, if they want to move forward, then at that point, we put a letter of engagement in place.
I guess they could just go to mancusocg.com.
They could,
you
yeah.
there.
Yep. And I'll, while we're talking, I'm just going to do, it's rdquickcheck.com.
I'll pull it up here. So the healthcare savings.
Oh,
that's another piece. Healthcare, because I was thinking about this, it's expensive. You know what I mean? And by the way, I've never seen anything, I think, out of all the expenses I've had over the years that goes up at the clip that healthcare has gone up. Yeah. Like, it doesn't even matter. It's it's going up 10, 20%, 30%. I mean, it's insane.
It's insane. It's insane, both as an employer and as an employee or somebody who pays for healthcare benefits. It's insane. The system is broken. Unfortunately, it might take the nuclear option to fix the system. I was on a call just recently with a company who's in the healthcare space, and the things that I learned that happen behind the scenes, that just the sheer amount of things they need to go through to be compliant it's just shocking to me. However, here's the deal. So healthcare costs, part of the reason, you've got a number of reasons why healthcare costs are the way they are. First, the system is broken, okay? And you could start with the high cost of prescription drugs, and I know the administration's working on that a little bit. You can, look at the high cost of risk with liability. There's a whole number of things you can look at there. But the fact of the matter is, healthcare costs are going to continue to go up. Two, the way that the system is structured traditionally is you have a company, you submit information on your employees, and let's say you have 100 employees. That information then is taken as a group, and it's submitted for quotes from 7 or 8 companies. There really is, 7 or 8 of the largest in the country. The quote comes back. You have a broker likely that does this for you. Not brokers. However, the broker's paid on commission. So when they come back with your quote, usually what happens, Jeremy, is the quote comes back at, okay, your new annual healthcare premiums are $250,000, $20,000 a month, whatever that number is. Now, Jeremy, the original increase was $30,000 a month, but what I've did is I've gotten them down to $20,000 a month. Now I'm being a little bit facetious, but in reality, this is how it works. And the broker, instead of taking X commission, takes Y commission to make you feel better about the increased cost. What this process does very simply is it looks at your healthcare costs differently and structures them differently under Section 105 of the tax code. It allows a company to do certain things first in quoting it. So let's say you have 100 employees, and I'm oversimplifying this because the team that we work with does all of this for our clients. But let's say you have 100 employees, and let's say the 100 employees range of 70 in age to 30 in age. And let's say of the 100, 30 of them are over 50. So you have 30 over 50 and 70 under 50. Okay, now just logically, which ones do you think are going to be more expensive to insure?
The older ones.
The older ones,
Yeah.
right? Yet in the traditional pricing market, they're all put into one group. So one of the first things that this structure does is it prices them differently. Now, again, the pricing of differently helps reduce the cost, just right there alone. And then the way that it's insured after that, so you get a catastrophic policy, and then you get a second policy under that. And I'm oversimplifying it, but basically the way that it's done is the company that we work with manages this all. Oh, by the way, they don't have to call an 800 number to get information on there. They don't have to go to HR. There is a customer relationship with this. And here's the coolest part about it, Jeremy. The company that we work with, which is ClaimLinks out of Ohio, their compensation is based upon cost savings. It's not a percent of the premium. It's based upon cost savings. So the more they can save their customers, the more that they earn. And that 30 to 40% is after their savings. So we're having a conversation right now with a very large firm, 130 employees. Right now, we're projecting to save them over $1 million a year. Okay, hey, listen, not my money, Jeremy. But do you know there will be people who go, well, I don't want to save $1 million a year because my HR person said that this is going to be more work for them. I'd fire that HR person in a heartbeat. Like, I'm being totally serious. Like, sometimes business owners allow people who don't value the owner's money as much as the owner does to make decisions because it might be more work. Now, I'm not saying it's more work, and I'm not saying might not be impacts on things, but hallelujah. It's just like the CPA making the decision for the business owner that the Augusta rule doesn't make sense for them to look at. Write me a check for that amount, and then we can have a conversation.
What number of staff does it make sense to go, okay, Pat, I have X number of staff. I should contact you to learn more. What's the bottom threshold?
We're doing one right now. Yeah, we're doing one right now, which I think there's 14 employees, and it's an annual savings of $40,000. By the way, I didn't share this with this is a big deal. The employees actually get more money in their paycheck without giving them a raise. I don't know. If you're a business owner and your employees could get a raise without you having to give them more money? So I would say 10 is a good number, but we've looked at some that have been less than that. And it's not just about the savings, it's about the deductible, it's about the opportunity. One of the things, remember, the company is incentivized for what they say. So let's say you have an employee, I'm ill, I feel really ill. Maybe I think I'm dying. I don't know.
And this doesn't change they still use the same insurance that they had.
They can, if they're with Cigna, they stay with Cigna. Now, we quote it, and that's all of the options. But let's just think about human beings, most human beings, many human beings, nothing wrong about this. If I feel like I've got something, maybe really, I'm not understanding what it is, do I go to urgent care first or the emergency room? Which one do I go to?
If I don't understand what I have?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends, but I think, for me, I'm going to the urgent care if it's not something's not falling off my body,
Yeah, no, but most people don't do that. They go to emergency room because they think it's emergency. They'll get treated fast. The average wait in emergency rooms in most major
exactly.
It's 3 hours. Oh, by the way, it's multiples of
Also, when you step into the emergency room, you I don't know, it probably costs $1,000 just to step in there.
Thinking in the parking lot, it costs $1,000. So what happens is the company because remember, they're incentivized to help the employer save costs, is they have a whole education vehicle. They actually help companies reduce prescription costs for the employees based upon what they do in the background. Because again, remember, they're incentivized to save companies money. And this isn't a one-time savings, it's an annual savings. So when your insurance goes up in your traditional model, and their renewal comes back, they're going to reprice, they're going to redo everything to make sure that they're keeping those cost savings in place.
Love it.
I don't know. It seems like a no-brainer to me based
Yeah.
on where healthcare costs are going, but that's just me. It's not my money.
Pat, I have one last question. That should be the new name of your podcast. It's not my money.
Love that. Maybe we should change it again.
No. No, I want to, first of all, I have one last question. Before I ask it, people can check out, we've been showing it on the screen, MancusoCG.com. You know, they have a lot of great resources. He's got some really informative podcast episodes. You can check it out under the resources, the podcast drop down.
Eric Gunderson's material is there as well under the resources section.
Great. Yeah, and that was my next question, which is like just some of the colleagues and mentors you've learned from. I know you've mentioned a few, Garrett Gunderson, you mentioned Roland Frazier, Ryan Dice. Who are some of the other influential people that, are colleagues, mentors that you've learned from throughout the years?
So we did a podcast episode with Vince Adana. He's the godfather of finance exit. He's been a great mentor to me. Gary Keller, obviously real estate, has been a great mentor to me.
What did you learn? Anything specific from Gary that you learned?
Yeah, the biggest thing is he wrote a book called The One Thing, and most people. I didn't interview Gary, but I lived in Gary's world for almost 20 years. Is that he wrote a book called The One Thing, and it really is almost an impenetrable model. It's the one thing first. That's what most people don't understand. It's not just one thing you focus on, it's the one thing first. So Gary has been incredibly instrumental. Dan Kennedy, although I don't have a relationship with Dan Kennedy, I am a Dan Kennedy junkie, so to speak. And so that's another person who's just, it's marketing 101 and it hasn't changed. And I just read his recent book about AI and business, and I think we're getting way too crazy about AI. And the thing most people, and again, I've tried to absorb as much of this as I can. AI is like the CPA who records historical data. AI is historical. It's when you look at AI, the true story. I'm going to mess up some of the particulars, but there was a recent story I saw that an individual went to AI in the tax credit world and took advantage of a tax credit, and then created an AI report with sightings from IRS actual cases and IRS code. He lost in tax court because none of what the AI report produced was accurate. Literally, it stated code, IRS code section, blah, 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 case law, and none of it was accurate. So, and Jay Papasan, co-author of the book, both amazing people. And so those would be the big mentors for me. I look at leadership.
Any favorite books? I mean, as a mentor, it could be distant mentor. Obviously, you mentioned One Thing You Happen to Know. Gary Keller, actually, I had Jay on the podcast a long time ago. I think it's a phenomenal book for sure. Any other favorite books of yours from a leadership?
And you can't really see it because of my background, but Ryan Dice, Get Scalable was a great book. I love that book. Gary's book Shift, Dan Kennedy's Magnetic Marketing. There's this book that Ed Lyon and I did, How to Beat the IRS Legally. That's a national bestseller. And then I co-authored a book with Jack Canfield called Unlocking Success. So I'm a book junkie. There's probably more sitting around somewhere because we just moved our offices, but we're not quite moved in yet. The book I read of Dan Kennedy on AI was incredible. It just totally blew my mind. Sometimes people think in history, okay, this is all new, and then you get back to everything is not new. It's just a different way to look at it. Like AI, you're in my age bracket, remember when the internet came out? Remember that company called pets.com? You do remember.
Oh, yeah.
You remember where are they now?
No, I have no idea.
No. So there's fundamentals to everything, life, business, you name it.
Pat, thank you. Everyone check out MancusoCG.com, check out the podcast, and we'll see everyone next time. Pat, thanks so much.
Jeremy, thank you so much. This was great. I love it. I love it.
So much fun.
If you're serious about building a more profitable business, make sure you subscribe to the Owner's Profit Playbook so you never miss an episode. And if you know another business owner who could benefit from this conversation, share it with them. To learn more about how we help business owners uncover hidden opportunities and strengthen their financial strategy, visit MancusoCG.com. And remember, what you don't know is costing you commas and zeros.